All right, gang, it's Mac and Stu here, and you're listening to the Wise Guys podcast, where we go rogue as we apply wisdom to the everyday to help us do it just a little bit better. This episode is going to kind of go right for your solar plexus, roguers. Just telling you right now, we're going to talk about the deception. Oh, pretty heavy word. I know, I get it. We're going to take a long, hard look maybe in the mirror a little bit and wrestle with how we are not only deceived by the world, that happens all the time, we just see it around us, but how we are really good at deceiving ourselves. So we're just going to really kind of just call it for what it is in this episode. And I think several of our latest Mystic McNuggets sort of speak to this. So we're going to flesh some of those out. Instead of one Mystic McNugget again, like we typically do, we're going to kind of elaborate a little bit more in this theme. But I wonder how many, hey, Stu, I wonder how many roguers we've already lost. Well, I don't know, buddy. But come on, gang. We got to buck up and hang with us. Really, hang with us, please. Because it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a little bit rough at some points, maybe, as we contour our own lives. But I think it's going to help us do it a little bit better. But we're going to do the roguish thing, as we always do, as we weave in our core values. And as I said, we'll deep dive into some of our latest Mystic McNuggets. So, Stu, man, let's unleash it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Hey, Mac. Yeah, this is going to be interesting today. I mean, as my emotions were all over the board as I was thinking about deception, right? Because we tend to be really positive. We have a positive outlook on life, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Something like this is reality. It's there. It's like reality check, right? So
Absolutely. Yep.
It's going to be an interesting conversation, but one, as you said, that I feel like will help us all to do this thing called life just a little bit better. So I just want to say namaste to all of you beautiful exotic cocktails out there. We love hearing from you. As usual, we ask that you check us out on Facebook and Instagram and send us an email. Send us your stories. We want to hear from you.
Yep.
Especially related to this week. We've all experienced deception, and we'd love to hear from you if you're so willing, and to maybe even unpack some of those stories that we get from you. What do you think, Mac?
I think, yeah, and I know that might peel into that onion back a little bit, might be a little bit. And you know what? Hey, gang, if you don't do it with us, if you don't do it in the medium to share with us, we want to encourage you right up front here. As some of this stuff maybe hits home a little bit, or you struggle with a little bit, start having some conversations with your folks and just, flesh this out a little bit. I think it'll be healthy for sure. So good encouragement, Stu. Good stuff. Yep. But deception, interesting word, right? What are the sources of it? Where does deception come from? And how can we do it a little bit better? And in general, I think I kind of define deception sort of as misplaced trust. Again, whether it's in the big picture scheme of things or in the microcosm, right directly in our own life, we trust certain things and we trust certain people, and sometimes we get deceived as we do that, and it's tough. It hurts. I get it, without a doubt.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it as misplaced trust. There's some other words and phrases I think of, Mac, when I think of deception. It's basically being misled. Right? Hiding the truth, like wherever you might promote maybe a belief or concept or idea that's not true, right? And it's typically for personal gain or advantage. I mean, it's very distracting in life.
Yeah,
right?
It hurts, man. It really hurts depending upon for sure how it comes into your life, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that misplaced trust really is a great way to kind of understand what deception how it might feel, right, for everybody.
Sure.
So there are several places that you can kind of see deception. And what we're going to talk about tonight is where we might see this in the world. We'll talk about people a little bit, and then we'll get into talking about ourselves, because this is what we do, right, Mac?
Yep.
Try to help us do it just a little bit better, because we believe if we can help ourselves to do it just a little bit better, that in turn helps people, and in turn helps the world, right? So that's kind of how we approach this. So the world, right? So think about deception in our world. The media. Oh, how dare I say that, right? The media.
I don't think we have to convince
There's no deception there, right? Yeah, right. So, I mean, we see deception in the media, in advertising. That happens so much. And we're seeing advertising all over the place, even more than we had seen it in years past and decades past. Now with social media, and you can't hide from it, right? If you have an Alexa or an Echo box in your home, and you're having conversations, and all of a sudden you go to one of the social media platforms, and boom, there's all the advertising for what you just talked about, right? So, so that happens. Religion, wow, so many people. I bet this strikes a chord with a lot of people that have been deceived.
And place trust, whether it's in the church or an entity or a person or God, I don't know, all the way across the spectrum, right?
A pastor, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Sure.
Wow. Yeah. And politics, of course, there's a ton of deception. There just is. We wish there wasn't, but it's there. There's not really a whole lot to unpack there. It is what it is.
We're not running that rabbit trail. We're just mentioning it here, gang. We're not going to go.
We're not that podcast.
No, that's right. Yeah. But
so the world, if you think about those things, in media, the news, advertising, religion, politics, that's kind of world related, right, Max? So so from that, let me move into just talking about people. And I think everyone out there, I think you're all going to get this. And as soon as I say some of these, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I know that person, or I'm thinking of certain people that have hidden agendas, right? I mean, this happens all the time. And there's power struggles. This happens at work, but it happens in sports, youth sports. There's power struggles. Can you believe that? I mean, I see this all the time. It's unbelievable. But of course, work, also you see that even in families, right? You see power struggles in families, right? The workplace, I'd mentioned that, the workplace already. And then mentioning families, that's basically close relationships. That's family, and maybe close relationships that are friendships you have. All these places there, unfortunately we see sometimes, and I want to say that, Mac, in hopes that it is really sometimes we see deception in these places.
Yeah. I mean, I think the point we're making here, and you guys, this is intuitive. You know this. That's why we're going to move on from it. We're not going to elaborate on any of this, that nothing is immune. There is no sacredness, quote, to any of these areas of life. And that's why sometimes it gets so difficult to navigate the waters, because it just seems like every time you turn around, somebody's stabbing you in the back, or, whatever it might be, depending upon your life situation. So these are very real, but the point Stu's already made, and I want to tie it back together again. And that's this. Yes, all that exists. Yes, it's there. We can't fix it in a podcast. We're not trying to. But what we are trying to say is those can be navigated better if we get the main thing right. And that's the next thing I think that Stu's going to talk about. And there's where we really want to kind of land the plane this week on our episode,
Right, is deceiving ourselves, right? So we talked about the world and people, and now where we can make a difference is really unpacking what that looks like.
Yeah,
right, Max?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to treat here's our point this episode, gang. This is what we're going to work off of from the rest of this episode. How we deceive ourselves and the repercussions of that and the consequences of that in our decision making and our relationships and all the different stuff. That's the root. If we can get that better, if we can get a better handle on our own self-deception, then we lessen, not eliminate. Listen to me. There's no way in the world that you're ever going to eliminate deception from your life. It's just that life's too complicated for that. It doesn't work that way. But we can really believe and see that we can lessen the possibility of being deceived in all those other areas that Stu just mentioned if we'll concentrate on ourselves first. Then the lens that we look at all the rest of the stuff through changes. And all of a sudden now, those possibilities of being deceived by the world and by other people lessen. And there's the main point we're trying to make here. That's what we really want you to grasp right now. Okay? So, there's where we're going to jump off from.
So, Mac, when I thought about how I might deceive myself or how people might deceive themselves, the first word that came to mind was fear.
A big
fear
driver.
Of change, right? That's a big one. Mm-hmm. But how about this? Fear that there's a different truth than what you currently understand. Oh. That is really a scary thought for people sometimes. And so they don't even want to go there. They just have this fear. And so they, there's a self-deception there where you're kind of hiding it, that truth. Yeah,
that's your quintessential. This is the Stewism. We've talked about this before, but it's so funny. Years and years ago, now I know. Oh my gosh, no, I don't want to know. I just learned some new truth. Oh my gosh, what do I do with that now? Right? Now there's a responsibility that you have to do something with it. You can ignore it, okay? Or, might need to adopt it. And that's, you're right. That's a fear for sure.
This reminds me of the Matrix, right? Taking the blue pill or the red pill.
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
It's like, which, do you want the truth? Do you want to know about the Matrix? Or why didn't I just take the blue pill? Yeah. I think I got that right.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I didn't have to know all of this. It's like, put me back, right? It's kind of like once the one character is like, just put me back. I don't want to know anymore.
That's it.
So there's that fear, right?
Yes, we do that. And, one of the things I think that we deceive ourselves, as part of this deception is that we lack good judgment. We don't necessarily think that we have good judgment, or these deceiving ideas that we have about life and about ourselves for sure causes us to make bad decisions and to not have good judgment in certain situations. And of course, that has a ripple effect into our relationships. It has a ripple effect into our quality of life. So deception, as we deceive ourselves to the truth, let's just pick up on where Stu was at, it causes us to make bad decisions and not have good judgment. There we are. This is a ripple effect.
So when I was researching this, Mac, there was some articles I read about self-deception and such. And one of the concepts I came across is we do this as an escape route. And as I was reading this one article, according to psychology, self-deception is one of the popular escapement methods that people use to prevent themselves from feeling guilty, right? It's one way to escape. But at the same time, it allows themselves to escape from something that they really don't want to face. Right?
The reality, just reality. Yeah.
But here's what's important to know. Of course, people don't deceive themselves on intention, but it's their subconscious minds that come up with tricks in order to protect their psychological well-being, right? So it's like your mind, sometimes you don't even consciously know you're doing this. You're subconsciously tricking yourself to protect your well-being, your own mental state.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yes, that's absolutely. And we've talked about biases. We've talked about the grid that we run everything through and how those create comfort zones for us. But we hear what we want to hear. When we hear what we want to hear, that's comfortable. That confirms whatever. And we might be totally deceiving ourselves, and yet we're warm and fuzzy and happy. But we lie to ourselves and often don't even realize, like I was saying, it's even subconsciously. And so there's we've talked mindfulness, and we've talked all kinds of different things that help you do the work so that you train your subconscious as well to not let yourself go there. So, I mean, this is it's a complex thing, but we don't want to leave out the idea that, in order to do this better, you have to do the work. There's going to be work involved in order to cultivate, a better decision-making process and to just call it out for what it is in your own self. No doubt about it.
Boy, this point of hearing what we want to hear, I have experienced so much in my life, especially with relationships.
Of course. Yes.
Right. And I've even, in relationships I've been in, I've even had that conversation. I didn't say that. You heard something different. Right. You heard what you wanted to hear. And same for me. I've done it myself. I heard what I wanted to hear. It's really interesting as a way to deceive yourself, right?
Oh, yeah. So, absolutely. Yep.
So check this out, Mac. So I got a question for you.
Okay. Shoot. I got an answer. I don't know, whatever. Yeah.
Can we trust our heart, our emotions, our passions?
Oh, wow. That is such a loaded question, Stu. I'm just saying that, as we try to figure out what it is when, that causes us to have confidence to pull the trigger in whatever situation it might be. A lot of times we've been taught, or we've not just been taught, but we've experienced, a very, very negative scenario when we did, quote, trust our heart or our emotions or our passions. And so a lot of times we stiff arm the trust in those things. And yet those are beautiful things, man. They really are. And we talk about the spirit all the time. We talk about, we're going to talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic, the whole intrinsic idea of life. And our comment to that is, here's my answer, Stu. You asked me the question, I'm answering. Yes, you can if you've done the work to cultivate those to where they're not just knee-jerk things or they don't have you all over the map.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So,
yeah. So you're what's interesting about that, and I appreciate you answering that. I know I caught you off guard on that one, but what's interesting is we've talked about this from the perspective of someone's character, right? Uh-huh. So if you one of the biggest compliments that I could get as a person, and I'm gonna give the example of as a dad. If somebody were to go to my daughter and describe a way I was talking or acting or being, let's just say it wasn't positive. It wasn't a good thing. The biggest compliment is for her to say, you know what? I know my dad's heart. I know him. Mm-hmm. I know what he's passionate about. I know him, and that doesn't sound like him to me. Like that to me, is, right. That's just an amazing.
Well, that's because you built equity. That's because there's people that have the trust. That's not misplaced trust, at that point. Now, again, I can hear people in the background going, yeah, but you don't know what happened when. Okay. And I believe me, we can't broad brushstroke this thing to just be always in every situation. We understand the nuances of life. What we're shooting for here is that if we do these things in the majority of situations, in the majority of cases, life's going to be better. All right. We get it that there's a lot of stuff that is totally out of your control, especially when it comes to people. So, I think that we can talk about, some of those things to help us do it a little bit better, because we have these abilities to go outside of ourselves and inside of ourselves, like you were mentioning last week, Stu, in the episode.
Yep. So we're moving in the conversation to how do we do this a little bit better, right? Like, right. So we've gone through deception in the world, people, ourselves, and we spend a little time on ourselves, self-deception, because that's where we want to focus, because we know that that's how we can do it a little bit better, when we focus on ourselves, right? So how do we do that? How do we do it a little bit better? Well, last week, you're right. We talked about, in previous episodes, we talked about happiness, we talked about wisdom, and we talked about this concept of cultivating discernment. And there was, extrinsic and intrinsic values here. Like, and extrinsic was like, the stuff I have, the car, the big house,
right?
The
From
nice clothes, right? Yeah. When we talked about happiness, and do those things make you happy, right? Intrinsic is more about, do you have wisdom, joy? Are you patient? Are you kind? Are you gentle?
Correct.
So a way we could do this a little bit better is to focus on those intrinsic values. Look for people that are those things.
Correct.
If you're not, to learn more to see how it's done,
Yeah, exactly. That we always talk all the time that there are those things that we can see, that we can practice, that we can do. Absolutely. Those are the extrinsic things. And then there's this intrinsic sense of the spirit, of the driving force of the universe. I mean, however you want to couch it, but it's the more than that we definitely want to tap into this and to cultivate, to help us be more discerning and to understand which way to go. And, it part of that comes from your folks. We call it the tribe of five all the time. You may have whatever. All right. But it gives you, to give them, if you haven't already done it, give them permission, or that person, just if it starts just with one, the permission to sort of call you out when they see it and to speak truth into your life. I just started watching this TV show called Ransom. And in this team, this guy has the one person he calls his second. And her role on his team is to ask the whys. She's the roger. Whenever he's doing anything, he's given her permission to go, why are you doing that? What are you doing? What's going on? Why is it, and again, it's not that we need people in our life and our friends that are constantly calling us out, because that's going to get old real quick. All right. But we need to have the freedom to be able to say, what are you thinking?
Right.
What are you thinking, man? Okay. And you need to give them the freedom to be able to say that to you in all honesty and answer them in all honesty. So I think that's an important part about how we can do a little bit better. Then the other, and again, great. It's asking the whys, not just let them ask you the whys, but just for yourself. Just examine your own motives in any given situation and ask yourself, why do I think this? Why am I doing this? What's driving the train? And you don't have to answer to anybody but you. But try to do that, to be perfectly honest with yourself. And maybe you're going to be able to go, ooh, wait a minute, I'm not sure. If I'm really honest about this, if I'm looking in the mirror, probably need to make a different decision.
Right.
Yep.
So Mac, this next point to help us all do it a little bit better is related to giving your tribe of five permission to call you out and speak the truth. And it's to stop taking constructive criticism as a personal attack. Right? I mean, not everybody's out to get you.
Man, that's such a great point.
Because here's what happens. The issues that we're most unsure about tend to be the issues that we get the most defensive and emotional about when confronted with ideas that really challenge our opinions, right? I mean, this is what happens.
Yep. Which is, so right. So true. The gray areas, when we're navigating in that little gray area, we don't want anybody, we don't want anybody, telling us, that might not be the best thing to do, or that might not be the most wise thing to do. Hello.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So also stop trying to convince everyone that you're right.
I think we just lost some people. Okay, we probably did.
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, people I when I talk with my wrestlers about this type of thing, I talk about them focusing on themselves. Be yourself, and be inspirational. Be an inspiration, and that might help somebody or cause somebody to maybe look at it a little bit different. But you know what? You're not going to change anyone's mind. I mean, no matter how passionately you believe it, somebody else might have the same passion that disagrees with you. So, you're deceiving yourself if you think that if you talk long enough that you'll change their mind. So it's
okay. Yeah. Hello.
Right?
Write that note down. Right. Well, here's the other just real basic common sense thing. Stop trying to convince everyone that you're right, because maybe you're not.
Aha. Wow. Nobody wants to think about that, right?
Just maybe you're not. Mm-hmm. Maybe you missed the boat. Maybe you've had an adventure in missing the point, as we talk about a lot. And we just aren't willing to consider the fact that we might be. That's all we're talking about here. Just a step back ponder point that says, have I missed the boat here? And just ask the question. Maybe you haven't, and it's okay, but maybe you have. All right. So the hubris can really creep in there if we're not careful. All right. That's it.
Absolutely. So here's another one that'll help us all do this a little bit better, Mac. It's just to quit doubting yourself. Just cultivate wisdom so you can trust your instincts and feelings, and you won't doubt yourself as much, right?
Yeah. It's not going to be like you're not going to make any more mistakes. That's not the point. But the point is you cultivate a strength to be able to have conviction in your decision making. And that's super important, gang. I mean, think about in your own lives in the back, where are you at right now in your life? If you had something important, a relationship, a job, a move, a biggie, I'm talking a biggie, if you had that come into your life right now, or maybe you have it, do you feel confident in yourself that you can make a good decision?
Right.
And what baggage are you bringing to the table that says, well, I've just had a litany of bad decisions in my life. My gosh, I'm not even sure I can make a good decision. Well, let's turn that boat around. Let's start working on that to help give you the confidence that you need to start going, yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah, I'm good with that. And so,
and one example of this has to do with age. Sometimes people think, okay, I'm past that point, whatever age. I mean, this happens in every decade of your life, right? And you might think, well, I'm too old to, make new friends or take up a new hobby, or like, I love hearing the stories, Mac, of the 80-year-old that just got a college degree.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
In their 80s. And you're thinking, why would you do that? And, I think it's a beautiful thing when that happens, trying new things. Right.
Yes.
I mean,
That's it. You just got to expand that box a little bit, So we'll kind of wrap this up, this episode, just with some of our latest Mystic Mac nuggets that sort of speak to this. They just elaborate a little more from the wise guy's perspective, but give you some ponder points and let you run it through your own grid as we elaborate from our perspective. But we think one of them is this idea that if everyone is thinking the same thing, that somebody isn't thinking. And it's this idea that if all you're doing is surrounding, that's why that guy had his second, right, that I was telling you about in the TV show. If everybody in your tribe and everybody in your bubble, if everybody you listen to and take advice from and watch, you're all thinking the same way and the same thing, then you know what? Our challenge to you is that maybe somebody's not thinking then. There somewhere along the line, there needs to be some interjection of, well, what about? And so just a thought there. That's one of our Mystic Mag Nuggets. All right. So,
and this is going to be easy, right? Because we're all unique, right? We're all exotic cocktails.
Exactly.
Like there's no way we're all going to be thinking the same.
Just
this is
let it out. Absolutely. It's that thing about, seeing stuff, right? So, let's jump on that. Let's go to the next one.
Right. So some things are just unimaginable. Be thankful that our hubris has limits.
It's whether you think your hubris has a limit or not, it does, right?
It does. Yeah.
So, we don't know everything. We don't have a lock on all the truth. We don't have it all figured out. And the sooner we get that, the better, right?
It's fun to figure things out, to have those conversations, to elevate kind of your perspectives, to say, wow, never thought about it before. But some things you just can't imagine. You're just,
right.
There's a mystical there,
right?
Which I think is beautiful, and we should celebrate, right?
Yes,
we don't want to know everything.
Gosh, no,
right?
Man. No, I certainly don't. So just realize it. But this is even. Here's another thought, that even if you can't set it right, because there's lots of scenarios in our life we just really can't fix in the moment. We just can't. Right? Whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's understandable. Mm-hmm. That's just the way life works. But it's one thing if you can't set it right. Not possible.
Right.
But you can see it right. You can step back from that situation sometimes and look at it from a different perspective. Just shift a few degrees and look at it from the other person's point of view, if that happens to be the situation, or look at it in a bigger picture scheme. There's all kinds of ways that you can reframe the current situation to see it a little more rightly and not be deceived by what you might have in the previous way looked at it from. So there's just again, it's that idea that says, just go a little higher, go a little left, go a little right, go a little lower. It doesn't matter. Just look at it a little differently, And I think you're going to.
That's a great point.
I think it's going to help, without a doubt.
Great point. Great point. I want to mention one here that we have on the list that I just love, and it's this, and it comes from Tama Keeves. Mm-hmm. Trust yourself enough to break your own rules.
Yeah, I love.
I love this.
I love Tama. I love her.
I love that she said that. Yeah, it's just it's amazing because many of us get stuck in our own rules, in our own mind, because we've always thought that way, or it's always been that way, and there's safety in that, right?
Yeah.
So if you can trust yourself, see, that's the key. Trust yourself enough to break your own rules. Wow, that's when your thinking really elevates.
Well, and what are those own rules? A lot of times they're a deception that you've created, for all the stuff that we've been talking about. Those rules that you've set in place, sometimes, not always, but sometimes can be an act of deception on your part to not really seeing the true situation for what it is, and we're all guilty of it. And to think that we're not, there's the hubris part again that creeps in. And there's our encouragement to you. Don't think for a minute that any of us, me, Stu, you, any of you are immune, to being deceived. It's just not that's false thinking. I'm just saying right now, So it's our encouragement that just says, start first within the mirror and call it for what it is. Just be honest with yourself. Trust yourself enough to go, I'm not doing that no mo. Okay. I'm breaking that rule. I just love Tama. She's so cool with that kind of stuff. So there it is, man. What do you think, Stu? Want to exhale a little? Right?
Ooh, yeah.
Kind of a heavy thing, a little convicting. But hey, folks, roguers, you need this sort of roguish attitude, we think, to be able to look at these deep subjects, these deep things that affect our lives in a deep way, a little bit differently, and be willing to go there, right? So thanks, Stu. Thanks for the wisdom, man. Thanks for the insight. I think we've been all over it tonight, man.
Yeah, as always, I appreciate this conversation, and I want to encourage everybody out there to have these conversations with people. You'll learn something about yourself, most importantly, and especially, but you'll learn about other people, right? And Mac, you and I talk about this all the time. Everybody has a story. Everybody has perspectives, and you connect much better once you hear those.
Yep.
Right.
No doubt. Agreed. So there it is, gang. That's us this week. We appreciate you listening. We care about you all. We hope this is helping you do it just a little bit better.
All right. See you later, everybody.
All right. Take care. Okay, all you roguers. It's Mac here. And you may now unbuckle your 4-point harness. If you enjoyed this episode of The Wise Guys, we encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. Please share it with your friends and drop Stu and I a note. Subscribing is the fuel that makes it possible to deliver fresh, eclectic wisdom every week. Let us know how you are going rogue, and we'll share some of our favorite off-the-reservation stories on an upcoming episode. And don't forget, spread the wisdom by liking us on all social media platforms and keep asking the whys. We love having you part of the conversation.